Hi, I'm Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacey Mallon.
And you are listening to the Optimized AF podcast.
We know life is hard. We're here to make it simple.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Optimized AF podcast. This is Blake.
And I'm Stacey, and we are here with Tom Frank, who just said he feels like he's home, and you are.
I do.
Welcome home.
You are. Welcome home, Tom
That's
Frank.
great.
And we have another Tom Frank-ism scheduled episodes, plural. So if you are listening to us now, we would invite you to stay tuned in for the next 3 weeks, because we're going to be talking about these topics over the next several weeks. And as we like to focus and as we wrap the end of our second season, we wanted to bring Tom back because our whole objective is also always making the complex simple. And we're talking today about one of the simplest things possible. So, Tom, why don't you introduce what we're going to...
Okay, before we do it,
Yeah.
Can I talk about your podcast?
You may.
Because I don't think you guys realize how meaningful the work that you've been doing is during the pandemic. Because the two of you come together, whether it's with a guest or whether it's just the two of you, and talk about things that we just really need to think about. And you do it in such a, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, such a, with a real gratefulness about it. And you come at it, you know, like, we deal with everything too. Let's talk about what you're dealing with. And I really appreciate it. Every time I listen to you, I think that feels good. It just feels good to listen to you. And so the fact that I'm invited back, and we're probably not going to talk to about anything as important as the stuff you've been talking about.
It's all important.
Yeah,
Every bit of
It's
it.
all relevant.
I just hope that you guys understand how important that you have been to our mental health in the last couple months.
I appreciate that, Tom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're grateful to
That
hear
means a lot. Yeah.
I just want you guys to know
This
that.
is a labor of love for us, and it's just as intrinsically beneficial for Blake and I. We've talked about that a lot. But of course, we started this in order to try to help people navigate. And even our last episode, which was around kids coming
The tide
home
of
from
anxiety.
school and the tide of anxiety,
Yeah.
all these real life circumstances.
I can't thank you enough, Tom, for sharing that. I mean, I actually, after the last week's episode aired, I got a text from one of our listeners too, that obviously a text message because I know them. They're, considered a friend of mine. And it just said, the tide of anxiety is real. And that sparked into about a 30, 40 text message exchange and then about an hour-long conversation, because it struck a chord and it meant a lot in this particular individual's life. And as I had that conversation, I'm like, wow, this has meant a lot in my life. And we had that conversation because it did hit home for you and I.
It
It
did.
really
was very-
did.
And wouldn't it be great that as the pandemic kind of recedes, so does the tide of anxiety?
I would love for that to be the case.
Wouldn't that be great?
I believe that can be the case. And I've been diving a lot into mental health for our employee population and trying to help people navigate out the other side. And I think that the connectivity that's coming back, and I know masks were a hotly debated topic, but for so many reasons, the human connection that is created in the absence of them, I think I think the plan, God's plan, the universe's plan, whoever your creator is, there is sometimes things that happen to help us appreciate what we had lost appreciation for.
Well, I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I've talked to a lot of people about anxiety because I actually went through my anxiety like my bar mitzvah. It was a rite of passage for me. And because what I learned about anxiety that I thought was really interesting is that everybody, after I experienced it and I started talking about it, I found out that literally everybody that I had any respect for went through it. And so I determined that anxiety is actually a thinking man's disease.
It is.
It's just, who was it, Nietzsche, who said the unexamined life is not worth living?
Yes.
Well, there's another side to it, which is the examined life is filled with anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah, when you think about it, I mean, really, if you have awareness, if you're actually a thoughtful person who is aware of things and you take the time to be, like you said, a thinking man or a thinking person, that's where it opens up to have anxiety about certain things, because you're actually aware. It's the people who are completely, pull the wool over my eyes, and I'm just oblivious to most things going on around me. They seem so blissfully happy. Nothing bothers them. It's like, well, yeah, because they have no fucking clue what's going on
you
around
actually
them.
connected the two words, because I heard a quote a long time ago that ignorance isn't bliss, it's oblivion.
That's a good quote. I agree.
Yeah, and I do have my times where I just turn on reruns of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and I'm fine.
Yeah, that's called flow.
Yeah,
Is
we need that.
flow?
That's called flow. We just talked about this, that sometimes we were talking about this with Lindsay Millenbrand with A to Z BizLink, and when I did some research, Adam Grant put out a paper through Harvard Business Review, and this whole kind of middle state of mental health, which is not thriving, but you're not depressed, languishing. The cure for languishing is flow. And flow can be watching Netflix, but you have to put your phone down. You have to be in the story, get into that place. And thank you, James Baird, for now getting me sucked into Stranger Things, which I've never watched before in my life. And so now we're on to a new series, and it's set in Indiana. It's very apropos for me. But it's a show that did very well. Nick, did you watch Stranger Things? I tried. You tried. So it takes a couple episodes to get into, but the interesting thing is it's really well written. So it gets you into the characters and the flow. And what I found is, and what I've been talking to people about is, that can also be, as you and I have discussed in earlier episodes, blocking out that time every day to do heads down work, whether that's writing or a project. That's flow too, in an uninterrupted flow of something. It doesn't even matter what it is. But I think that is, we like to label if people are depressed or anxious or you're thriving. But Adam Grant's point is there's this whole middle ground that has a name called languishing. And a lot of people are languishing right now.
Well, I also called you or texted you, I think, after watching your podcast about Inner Circle.
Yes.
Just to make sure I was on yours.
You're in my inner circle.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
I thought that was... those are great episodes, and I just wanted to make sure you guys know that this matters. What you do matters.
Thank you.
Everybody deserves to believe they matter, but you guys, what you're doing really does matter. So I guess what I wanted to do is talk about a book that I want to write. That, everybody says to me, Tom, why don't you have a book? And I'm like, I don't know what I have to say. And I've been thinking about it, and I think I want to write a book, and I think I want to call the book Don't Eat Your Shoes. Actually, I think I want to call it Don't Eat Your Shoes and other really stupid things that we didn't think we had to teach you.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, the name I would really love to put on it, but I haven't figured out how, is I want to call it Really?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to put that on the cover, but like, really?
I
Seriously?
can see it. I can picture it.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you do? Really? Seriously? Was I supposed to tell you that? And I think about it, and I've talked about this to a lot of people, about stories they have with employees that they've worked with or other people that they've come across in work, and everybody seems to have stories about, like, seriously, were we supposed to put that in the training manual?
Yep. I have lots.
You do?
I do.
Anything in particular? Because I've got some good ones.
You start and I'll follow up.
Okay, so this happened in Sacramento, California, at one of our restaurants. And a customer came in around 2:00 in the afternoon with a cake, a box with a cake in it, and said to the host, "We're coming back for a birthday dinner, and would you mind having the chef put this in the kitchen for us?" So they did. They took it back to the kitchen, and later that night they came back to the restaurant with their family, and they had a very nice dinner, and they said to the server, "We brought a cake for our birthday, and we're ready for it." So the server goes back into the kitchen and gets the chef and says, "My guests have brought a birthday cake, and they're ready for it." And the chef got a look on his face. He said, "Oh my God, we ate their cake. We ate their cake."
I knew this was going to be the story, but I was hoping I was wrong.
We ate their cake. Okay, but that's not the bad part of the story.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the bad part of the story is the server went back to the customers and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we ate your cake."
Oh, jeez.
Like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Really.
We were supposed to tell you not to do that? Seriously? And how do you recover from "we ate your cake"? Like, I keep thinking...
I think you say, and it was delicious.
And it was delicious. And what bakery was that from?
By the way, where did you get that
Yeah,
from?
where did you get that? Because it
I'd
was...
like another slice.
Yes, seriously. Were we supposed to put somewhere in the training program that don't go to the customer and say, "We ate your cake"? We dropped your cake.
Yeah.
We sat on your cake.
Anything.
Anything.
Sometimes honesty is not the
And
best
here is a
policy.
replacement desserts on the house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can
of course.
recover from that.
Yeah.
But you can't recover. I mean, I know, by the way, as we're speaking, the person who we did that to is telling that story right now again. There's over and over again, they've been saying, "Hey, we went to dinner there
And they ate our cake."
Because we will never recover. And I think, how's that for a don't eat your shoes moment?
Yeah.
What are yours?
So one has to do with sexual harassment, which is usually a very serious topic, and I'll have to protect the names of the organizations. I was thinking about this one when we were talking. But it's so outlandish that it was one of those times that so I'm the head of HR, and I really am typically not at a loss for words after many, many years of doing this and many investigations, but we were sitting across from... So I'll say he was a medical professional, somebody who had, a PhD or an MD, I can't remember. And he, I said, the individual that brought forth the concern said that you asked her a question, and for her, it made her very uncomfortable. And this is after she's told you previously that, these things make her uncomfortable. And I said, "Do you remember what question I'm talking about?" And he said, he kind of wiggled in his chair, and he was like, literally thinking, like going back in the Rolodex. And I'm thinking, like, how many inappropriate things do you say in a day? This is a little frightening. And he said, oh yeah, I just asked her if she wanted to have sex with me. And I said, and that's why sitting across the table, I was like, I don't even know what to say to that, because I was 100% sure you were not going to say that. And I was 100% sure you were going to deny. So I kind of fumbled a little bit and said, well, I'm not even going to ask you if you feel like that's an appropriate question. That's an incredibly inappropriate question to anyone, ever, forever. Just know that moving forward. You're not going to work here anymore, but for any place else that you ever work, that's an inappropriate question.
And it's kind of one of those things where in your training manual, when you talk about sexual harassment,
you don't
do
say.
Do you want to put in there not to say
Don't
that
say,
question?
Do you want to have sex with me? So I think that it's a really important topic in some ways right now more than ever, because common sense is not always equally applied. And I think about the way the world is right now. So we went to, again, I'll protect the innocent, but we went to a restaurant last night, and James and I were talking about, there was a younger lady behind the counter, and the line is backing up. She didn't even acknowledge the humans backing, like all the people, and the poor guy standing at the register to order. And then there was us, spaced. And then there was a younger guy behind us, like a teenager. We were there for probably 10 minutes. She's making a shake for apparently a to-go order. She didn't acknowledge the person that was standing right in front of her. So I think common sense is not always applied right now, and maybe it's this post-pandemic wave, but it's always been true. But I just wonder if some of these things, us being on video conference calls, and there's things going on behind the scenes, life is happening, but I don't know that common sense is being applied even more than ever, I would just say. I think maybe common sense has kind of been set aside to some degree.
I wonder if the people that are watching this, because I know that there's a bunch of people watching it going, "Oh yeah, I've got some stories."
Oh yeah.
How can we get them to share them with us?
That's a good question. I would love for people to share stories with us.
I think definitely on the YouTube channel. I mean,
5-star review on Apple, and we will read your review. If you want to follow us on Instagram, we're trying real hard, people. Real hard. So if you want to follow us on Instagram.
Real hard?
Real hard.
Real hard? Was
hard.
that we're doing reels?
Yeah.
Blake, do you have a Donate Your Shoes story?
Of course.
Oh,
He's got
boy.
100. He was in hospitality forever.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
so in when I say kind of cut my teeth in my career, I started off in hospitality. Okay, one particular story that comes to mind. So I was managing a hotel property here in the Phoenix area, and we had an employee that just kind of came up to me one night and he said, "Hey, look, don't want to really get into the details, but things at home aren't that great. We're kind of like a night away from my wife." I think that was his way of saying he got kicked out. But, he just said, "Is there any way I can stay here tonight?" And I said, "Hey, let's take a look at our occupancy. We're not full. Absolutely. Tell you what, I'm not even going to charge you the employee rate. Okay, we're just going to drop it down. You just got to cover it." We always had it nailed down to exactly what our costs were in terms of labor and materials and everything else to just turn the room over, basically the cleaning fee. And so we worked out those details and extended that courtesy, which was not exactly against policy for the hotel, but it wasn't something that we promoted doing. So middle of the night, I get a phone call from the local police department and go down to the hotel, which is what every hotel manager's worst nightmare is to get that middle of the night phone call for a fire or for a guest for whatever. And so I go down there and then I start to get the details. Well, the incident that occurred involves this employee. And so to the Don't Eat Your Shoes, I didn't think that I would have to tell him, "Hey, you know what? I really hope things get better at home. You can absolutely stay here." And then that I needed to follow that up with, "And by the way, it's not okay to get plastered drunk at the bar tonight and then start fights with the other guests that are staying at the hotel."
You forgot to put that in the training
I
manual?
completely forgot to tell him that this was going to be a frowned upon activity.
Yeah.
So shame on me.
Yeah.
But, so there's that.
Yeah.
We had plenty of, it's like, "Hey, guys, I really didn't think we had to put it in the training manual when we onboarded you, but having sex in the liquor closet with a fellow employees while guests are waiting in the lobby to check into their rooms, that's not typically an activity we want to have."
And so don't.
Yeah. And so
what
don't.
you do, we got to write this book. And then we got to fill it up with all these things,
stories.
all these Don't Eat Your Shoes moments where we forget to tell the employees, but we think maybe now's the time. It should probably be a separate from the rest of the training. It's kind of an, "oh, by the way, don't eat your shoes"
Yes.
kind of thing, because there's just all kinds of them.
I liked one that you have, which is your parents are not calling you in sick, which
Oh, yeah.
I will tell you at, again, another organization I was at who showered. It happened all the time. I'm grown ass people, let me just say. And it's not that it's one thing if you're in the hospital and okay, these are just people that maybe had the man cold and decided, and by people I mean men, the man cold and decided they just couldn't adult. And therefore the parent, literally always the mom, let me just say, and I'm just being completely biased in this whole entire commentary, but man cold is always the mom every time. And I'm like, I can't talk to you. I need for him to call us. This is a grown-up, sometimes a pharmacist who is literally dispensing medications to other humans on a regular basis. He needs to call us.
Well, we hired a lot of young people, so we hired, and some of them, it was their first job. And I can't tell you how many times the mom would call and say, "Jimmy's sick today." And I'm like, "Lady, I apologize, but I did not hire you.
Yeah, I hired Jimmy.
I hired Jimmy."
Well, it's so when you think about it, right? I think we've always. Let me back that up. I think many of us have come across a piece of signage at some point or another, right? Like, "Don't feed the bears."
Oh yeah.
Don't stand on the ledge at the Grand Canyon, right?
Yeah.
So why do these things exist? Why do they make it into a
'Cause
piece of
somebody
signage?
did it. Somebody
Why do they
did
make
it.
it into a training manual?
Yeah.
It's because enough people, sometimes it only takes one, but enough people threw common sense to the wind and said, "I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that." It's like, well, did we have to tell you?
Can I tell the Evans story? You know the Evans story.
I know
Oh,
the
no,
Evans
please.
story.
So, oh my gosh, I hope my son doesn't listen to this podcast. So my son this happened last year. It was not that long ago. And we were in our rental home. So we hadn't lived there very long. And he was getting a vinyl delivered by UPS. And so he told me he was getting a vinyl delivered and he was very concerned because it was hot out. It was the summer. It was last summer. And I pulled up to the house and I saw this. I thought we were getting evicted. I saw this giant sign on the front door. I literally was like, well, I paid my rent. What's happening? I'm like, did the people that own the house, are they getting foreclosed on? What's going on? Fear. I walk up. It's a note from my son to the UPS driver. It said, "Dear UPS driver," I will post the picture because I still have it. I will post it. "Dear UPS driver, I am not home. And although my younger sister, I believe he said my younger sister, will be home by 4:00, I don't know if you're going to arrive before then or something. The rock that is located below the bench," I'm not making this up, this is a true story, "has a key. Please open the door and put up my package inside if you could lock the door behind you." I was beside first of all, I'm thinking, is someone currently in my home? Of course, I called James and he didn't believe me. I don't think he believed me. I had to take a picture. That's why I have the picture. And then we had to explain to Evan all of the faults of this line of thinking. But so I guess this also holds true to talk about hiring young people.
Sure.
Teenagers don't always connect the dots on the logic of the whys and why not. In his logical brain, the vinyl was going to get ruined if left outside. And that was the priority because teenagers are self-centered assholes. Let's just call it what it is. And so it was like, here's my priority. It's my thing. Your house doesn't matter. Now, when I explained to him, his vinyl probably would have gotten stolen too if somebody else got into the house. Then it was all bets were off. But I just think that, sometimes common sense is hard.
Okay, if we're going to go there, then
Yeah.
let's talk about Axe body spray.
Oh, let's talk about it. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about running a restaurant where people come in and they go, "It smells great in here," and then the busboy walks by and he's sprayed a whole bottle of Axe body spray on him.
Yes.
And you have to explain to him, no. First of all, I don't know who buys it anyways.
no.
But just don't.
Just don't.
Just don't.
And it's teenage boys, and I can't tell you why, but this goes for let's run down this list. Let's just play a game. Don't do that at the gym. I don't want to smell your Axe body spray when you're on the treadmill next to me. Don't do this in an airplane. I don't want to sit next to you for 4 hours with your Axe body spray. Where else would this be applicable?
I got one.
You got one, Nick?
Have you just smoked a bunch of weed and you're trying to hide it?
Oh, yeah, we know.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
not stupid.
Never
Yeah.
works.
We know. We already
Yeah.
know that you
Not
smoked
that
a
I
bunch
would
of weed, besides the fact that you're super thirsty and have the munchies.
There's so many. I mean, it's that common courtesy and that awareness of the other people around you.
Yes.
Yeah, but you have
It's-
to.
it's
But
like
that's
they-
what Donate Your Shoes is about. Just
Yes.
like these are things that you might not have thought about that I need, and that we as employers need to not necessarily put it in the training manual, but it needs to go somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to have to address
this-
it. I mean, just the idea of showering.
That's just it, though. This conversation kind of led me to a thought, right? So a lot of, and I honestly don't think a lot of parents do this intentionally, but when you think about youth sports or that first employer, a lot of parents sort of hand over the keys to their child
We got a job to do.
of like, hey, you know what? You're a baseball coach. I'm gonna enroll Jimmy on your team, and they might show up and sit in the stands, but they pray that Jimmy's gonna learn from you some discipline, the value of moving your body. All this. First employer, they're like, God, I hope you learn responsibility from this job, and that boss is a good boss. I'm going, isn't that your job before you get that little Jimmy on
It
the
is.
team?
One day
before they go to that.
I called up my niece and my nephew, who were both in their early or late teens, and I started just going off on them about being dependable and reliable. And they're like, Uncle Tommy, what did I do? And I'm like, nah, it's not you. I just don't understand why so many people that I hired that at your age don't understand that just be dependable, just show up. It doesn't really matter. I used to tell people during the orientation about how important that is. And I would say, listen, if you are a dependable, reliable employee, you could probably steal and get away with it. Because I really value being dependable.
It's true, though.
Yeah.
Seriously, just show up. Just show up on time. That means a lot to me. And you're right. I guess I'm teaching them for their parents.
It is. And I don't think anybody who's been in those industries is scared of taking on a little bit of that responsibility. I mean, at least most of the managers or even shift leaders that I ever had on my teams, they would take pride in being the example that somebody else could learn from. An individual contributor that was on their team, and they were the shift leader, and they were responsible for running a smooth shift, and they were responsible for taking escalations as things come up. But they served as an example for somebody else. And I think they took a lot of pride in that. And that was a very minor example, but these common sense things that are not so common, I think it gets lost through the younger years that foundation needs to be placed there.
Well, and you and I were talking about this. I just wonder if we saw a handbook from a Chick-fil-A. We were talking about In-N-Out. Like, they have very structured programs because they pretty much hire young people.
Right.
And because of that, it is a very structured, QT has a very structured program because the vast majority, so I wonder if their handbooks actually say some of this because they have
I hope so.
the vast
maybe they do.
majority of.
Maybe they do.
Or maybe they don't have to. I mean, I hope not. But if not, they're going to have to deal with it. But sometimes this backfires because I remember years ago when I was running a restaurant and we were opening a new restaurant. We were hiring for new people. And some kid came in, and he was very young and stuff, and he was just not dressed right, and his hair was, he looked like he was begging to not get this job. And so I thought I was going to be the grown-up here, and I was going to explain to him why I would never be able to hire him looking like this. And so I gave him that story and explained to him, and he left. And by the afternoon, he came back. He had his hair cut. He changed his clothes. He was wearing really nice clothes. And I was so proud of myself for really, really directing that child to become an adult and how important I was in their life. And so I hired him, and I was just feeling really good about it. And then a week later, I saw him putting a case of beer from the restaurant in the back of his car, and I thought, sometimes it doesn't work.
Well, he learned some things from you, but not all the things, apparently.
Well, I learned something from him.
Yes.
Like, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I don't know. I think that we need to, that's why I really like to hear people who are paying attention to this tell us more stories, because everybody's got stories that you're like, seriously? Was I supposed to tell you that? Although I did play a prank on one of my bosses one day, and where we were opening a new restaurant, and the safe where we keep the money had just been delivered. And so the guy gave me the combination and everything. So I put a fake combination on a Post-it note, and it says combination to the safe, and I posted it on the safe. It was not the right combination, but my boss freaked out.
He was not happy with you.
He was just not happy. He was like, why would you do this? This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I just laughed, and I said, no, it's not the real combination. I was just playing with you.
I imagine that you would be a lot of fun to work with. And is that pretty common for you to sort of poke the bear?
Yes, absolutely.
I figured.
Yeah, but just because this is the entertainment business, we're here to have fun, and people show up, and we should be having fun too. It's not just that. It's this, that, and plus, I used to get in trouble for a lot of things that, or not get in trouble for it, that are now in my don't eat your shoes or in my rules and regulations and policies and procedures. I think I talk about this sliding scale of morality. When you're young, it kind of creeps one way or the other. And I remember managers coming to me and saying, "Hey, Tom, we just saw so-and-so snatching a bottle of wine when he left the restaurant." And they would be so upset about it. And I'd say, "Oh, I used to do that." And they're like, "Oh, Tom, don't say that." I'm like, "I used to do that when I was a waiter. Every once in a while we do that." And I'm like, but it's really not worth losing your job over. I think you were talking about sexual harassment at the very beginning.
Yep.
I think that's a don't eat your shoes moment, even though we've got a whole manual on it, even though we've got a whole agreement about it. Like, seriously?
Yeah.
Are you getting fired for doing something inappropriate with an employee? Aren't there enough other people in the world that you couldn't find somebody else? I'm
Go harass someone else,
I
please.
just don't even understand sexual harassment because it's such a stupid way to lose your job.
Yeah, I think I can understand unintentional, especially if, again, talk about younger people who maybe, or even people who have just never been in a setting where, or have come from other settings where it's just the norm is different. And I think that part can be confusing. But I have lots of examples of very overt things that, again, your mama should have taught you, and probably did teach you, and it didn't stop you from continuing to go down that path. I think some of the ones that you also mentioned, showering and body odor, I think for leaders to say out loud, those are really challenging things to bring up to folks. And I think it can be a slippery slope. What if there's a medical condition? What if there's this or that? But I do think that creates a lot of anxiety for leaders to even address common sense issues sometimes.
So we'll
Yeah,
have to write
yeah.
the book and then we'll say
Help
it for them.
how?
Yeah.
Help the how.
Yeah, just give them an idea. Like, these are things that we maybe should have told you, but we're going to tell you now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to tell my employees to look around the restaurant and try to find something that's to steal that's more valuable than your job and your self-respect.
Well, that's good, Tom.
Yeah. I'd be like, look around, because there's nothing in the building that you can steal that is more valuable than your job and your self-respect. And when somebody catches you stealing, I don't have a choice to make as a manager.
Yep.
I have to. I'm going to fire you. But what a stupid thing to get fired for.
Well, and shame on you for
Yeah.
putting the leader in that uncomfortable situation. In some ways, that's what I always get frustrated about in those situations, because it's really unfortunate that someone has to also have a bad day because of your bad decisions. And I know we've all worked in restaurants. Like, I remember I totally blame my first restaurant job ever for my complete addiction to chips and queso and salsa, because I worked in a Mexican restaurant. That was my first ever job. And I ate enough chips, and which we were allowed to eat, by the way, was not stealing. We were allowed to have unlimited soda and unlimited chips, salsa, and queso. So guess what? I was poor, and that's what I did.
That's how you build loyalty
That
with
is.
a workforce of teenagers.
That is. And
Feed your employees.
We got
Always feed your
one
employees.
meal a shift, and I always got the same thing. And they, of course, by then you have like great relationships with the back of the house, and they make you whatever you want, and it's amazing because they know exactly how you want it. So I got the same thing. But I will say this is back in the 90s, right? And the bartenders used to, underage, of course, like, we had stuff in our glasses all the time. Now, I think the way the world is today, that wouldn't be,
That's the sliding scale
Yeah.
of morality.
it wouldn't be acceptable at all.
Yeah, and it's
It
not.
probably wasn't acceptable then, but it was
but
happening.
you
But it was
know,
happening, though.
I'm thinking about what we're talking about, and I'm thinking with this book or this idea of don't eat your shoes, or really, I don't want these to turn into policies and procedures.
No,
Yeah, you
These
don't
are
want
not
to.
policies. These are, think about
common
it.
sensicals.
Yeah, it's sort of like you telling, like, what would you not steal? It's almost like the same thing. It's like, okay, you don't want to, forgive me, whoever's named Brad out there, just use you as an example. You don't want to be known as like pulling a Brad, right? Where like all of a sudden now you're the
thought it was
story. Jimmy, we were beating up on Jimmy for a little while there, so I just pulled Brad into the mix. But you don't want to be known as like, you don't want the don't feed the bear sign to be because of you, right?
Yeah.
You don't want that policy to have to be created because of your poor choice on something that seemed so logical that we didn't have to document it. but now we do because you pulled a Brad.
But there's a gravitational pull to do that, and those are people that are obsessed, what I call flat world thinkers, who are obsessed with, okay, now we need a policy on
Yeah.
that. Like, you don't need a policy on that. You just need to teach common sense.
And have a code. I mean, I think how some people cover it is a code of ethics, just a general statement that you're going to behave in an ethical manner. And that's what you say. Like, we have an ethical workplace. We take care of each other. We're aligned to our values. I know you strongly believe in that. We have a purpose and we serve people, and that's the end of the story. And I worked someplace, one of the best places I've been before, and we had a code of ethics. It was very short, and I terminated people for that code of ethics. And then you'll get the unemployment claim and they ask you for the policy. I'm like, here's our code of ethics. And guess what? They accepted it. I said, we have a code of ethics here. And this person violated that code of ethics.
I think maybe what we need is a chapter, which is in the chapter would be stupid things that we're going to fire you for doing.
Yes.
Like, these are just
might
stupid
be long.
things. Yeah, it might be
So that's
half the
more
book.
than a chapter.
Yeah, stupid things we're just going to fire you for.
Yes.
And by the way, in that mode, because in the restaurant business, this was an issue, and I worked as a waiter for years, and believe me, I wanted to do it. You'd always have somebody who would get mad at a customer who didn't leave you a good tip, and some of them would follow the customer to their car and hand them back the tip and say, hey, I think you need this more than me. And it's just like, God, we've all wanted to say that. We've all wanted to throw a tip back at a customer in the parking lot. I just have to fire you for that.
Yep.
Just doesn't make any sense. Just don't do it, because these are things that I have to fire you for doing. And just so, did I really have to put it in the training manual? But I do have to fire you if you do that.
Yeah. That's just, it's, again, unethical, right? Are you, when you were working in the hotel and restaurant space, was there anything ever that was just absolutely outlandish that you can think of? Because I was trying to think of the most, definitely.
I think getting drunk and getting in fights at the bar when they're
pretty
giving you
outlandish.
a cheap room,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty outlandish.
Yeah.
There's
I mean, this was-
definitely, I feel like people's carnal sexual drive does get in the way of their logic
and
from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then think about the demographic that we were talking about in the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry. I mean, these are young people.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
there's
firing
a
on
room
all
and there's a
cylinders. Okay.
They're firing.
on all cylinders,
cylinders,
at
yes.
all times. So it's no different than those of us in our adult years of our careers, where you have your family and you have your work family. There's a reason we kind of label it that way, because you spend so much time with these people. And even as a part-timer, as a young kid, I'll call them, or young adult, I mean, you're in your first job or your second job, and even though it's part-time hours, in the whole scope of what they spend their time doing, they spend a lot of time around these people. And so it's natural that when they're firing on all cylinders, stuff's
Things
going to
go
happen.
down, but please
Stuff's
don't
gonna
have
happen.
things go down at
Yes,
work.
you just, you say, look, the deep freeze, it's not the place for that.
Yeah.
Although there's no peering
little
eyes.
dangerous.
But you just might not want to go in there.
Yeah, I worked at a place that was so outlandish. I'll tell you 3 things that should be in this book. Don't sell weed from your desk.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
That's always a problem. Don't steal a customer's credit card and then order a pizza to your house using the customer's credit card. That's never good.
Don't eat your shoes.
Don't eat your shoes. And don't have a fist fight on your smoke break in the common area. And I terminated people for those 3 reasons. I think within 1 week at that particular place I was at. And I won't say that was an abnormal week.
Yeah.
So I think, but yeah, so I think
mean-
that chapter could be lengthy, but it
Yeah.
might be very
Yeah.
valuable for people.
Maybe you should have a separate office for, I'm going to take you in this office. This is where I fire people for stupid reasons.
This is the stupid reason office.
Yeah, this is the stupid reason for firing you office. But I can't do anything about it. Don't blame me.
This is what happens.
You just made that decision.
Oh, it's like the movie, what's the title of it? Waiting, with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, that is a comical film that completely depicts a lot of the stereotypes that happen in restaurants, of the things that when you look at the behaviors that's occurring in there, you're going, do we have to tell you that that's not okay?
Yeah.
the Batwing or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
The problem is,
did
though,
we have to tell you?
the problem is
You haven't
and
seen
I
the
want to
movie, go
make
on.
sure we're clear about this. We're not encouraging people to include this as
No, as a policy.
as a policy and a
Right.
procedure. These are just stupid things that we shouldn't have to make a policy.
Right.
Because if everything becomes a policy and procedure, then why would you want to work at a place
Yeah.
that's just the next thing is
Well, and I'm glad you said that, Tom, because the episode is not to say that none of this quote unquote fun stuff shouldn't happen. I think all of us, like you said, hey, you know what? I stole the bottle of wine. You know,
No, I snagged a bottle of
Snagged, yeah, snagged. You know,
Snagged it.
Stacy's over here like, hey, I spent time in the deep freeze.
Yep.
I
Yes.
just,
Oh.
Thanks, Blake. No,
You know, but
I
I mean,
was getting
here-
drunk at the bar. Let's
Here's the-
be clear
Yeah, no, I
about
mean,
what was happening.
Come on, I have been the person who was the, you know, you got the key hourly, they call it, you know, the key hourly manager that's closing up the restaurant that night. You got the closing bartender, and you got the closing server, and you got the kitchen staff in the back. We're purposely closing the front of the house as slow as possible,
Right.
so that the back of the house is all done. They're all out of here because that leaves us in there to just lock the front door, sit at the bar, and just free reign.
So the takeaway, as we love to leave everybody with a common sense takeaway, one thing I think Blake said that I'll say as a parent of teenagers is it is to some degree your responsibility to help to level set your teenagers as they go into their first job about common sense. And like you said, Tom, like I had conversations with my son about showing up for work for his shift because his coworkers are depending on him. And so I do think it's at that age, some degree of parental
And it's
responsibility.
it's a great reputation.
Yes.
Like just get that reputation and then you can get away with all the other stuff.
Yeah, because that you can't take that back by leaving people high and dry. And I also think we talked around this a little bit, but to your point, Tom, you're not saying create policies because you know I'm not a fan of handbooks or policies, but this is common sense stuff. And I think helping your leaders, preparing your leaders to address common sense stuff is also highly relevant to our audience because that is something that I think nobody ever tells you sometimes how to address some of these things. And Tom, you're just so upfront and honest, and I'm sure you dealt with them in an upfront and honest way, which I so appreciate. But some people that would be scary.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I love the people who just refuse to admit that they ever did any of these things. But
Yeah, good
I don't
luck.
think I want to work with those
That's
people
humanity.
necessarily.
That's humanity.
Yeah. You know, from this, I think one of the things I think just take a little bit of a different spin. We had a lot of fun sharing a few stories, and I know all of us have a whole hopper of additional ones that would take a lot longer, and we'll save those.
And
for
I
the
can't
book.
wait to hear what they have to say.
Well,
what
definitely
people
hear
are
from everybody
watching have to
else's.
say.
Yep. If you are that, I made a reference earlier about, you know, a youth sports coach or, you know, the teacher, the shift manager, even, you know, at a restaurant, and you get the opportunity to cultivate. What I'm reminded of is like, and just to use the sports analogy through, and I may have even used this before. One of the most valuable people for the success of a varsity sports team is the freshman coach and the JV coach and the ones that are cultivating the young men and women through the routines and the discipline and the skill sets and growing that foundation in order for that varsity coach to go and win the championship. So let's bring that back to the home front then. So like you really, I mean, I hate to say this from a parent's perspective, but for entering your children into the workforce, into the world, you're a bit like the freshmen and the JV coaches. You are laying the foundation in order for them to go out into the world and have this other person who's a VP or an SVP or a C-suite leader cultivate and grow that person and then go win the damn championship.
And talk to them about it.
Yes.
You know, take the time to talk to them about it. One of the things that I want to talk to them about is there's no stupid questions if you don't know the answer. It's not a stupid question if you don't know the answer. And if you're a new employee who doesn't know the answer, ask somebody. Because if you think that you're going to get an answer just out there in the ether, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's another don't eat your shoes moment is tell us if you don't understand what's going on.
It's for so long, people's value was so strongly tied to having the answer.
Yeah.
It is not valuable that you have the answer as much as it's valuable that you know where to go to get the answer, or just actually, I'll take that back, even that you're willing to go and search for the
Yeah,
answer.
to acknowledge it.
Acknowledge that you don't know. That's okay. You don't need to know everything. I actually don't want those people on my team. I do not want the
Right,
person
and
who
we
thinks
know
they
you're
know
going to make
everything.
mistakes.
Absolutely.
But you're going to get in trouble not because you made the mistake, but because you pretended you didn't make the mistake,
Right.
or you didn't tell me about it, and then I found out about it on Yelp, or I had a customer call and complain.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
you've got to come to me. So I think the assumption about don't eat your shoes, or really, is we just can't assume that they know these things. And it's our job. It's our job to, you know, even if they say, yeah, I know, tell them anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
completely agree.
Good to hit that home.
Well, so
And-
again, go ahead. I was gonna say, so again, we want to hear your guys' stories. Thought we were gonna wrap up here. So, as Nick had suggested at the beginning of the show, you know, if you guys would like, go over to iTunes, go to the App Store, get onto the podcast there, leave us a review, and share your story from this episode on something that you know has been that don't eat your shoes moment from maybe some of the early days in your career or even outside of the workplace, because we all have those stories.
Yep. And if you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook, we're on all the social media. Anywhere you want to post a story, we'll be happy to share it. If you follow us on that medium, we would appreciate it.
Can't wait.
And we have one more episode left this season, and that is the next episode we're going to be filming with Tom. So stay tuned for the final episode this season, where we're going to be talking about something that I would say I can't imagine one person in the world hasn't experienced in the last probably at least 2 weeks. Definitely for most people, the last week.
Impacts everybody.
So it impacts everyone. It's a very practical conversation. So we look forward to seeing you guys soon, and you guys have a good rest of your week.
Before we go, am
Yeah.
I supposed to change my outfit now to pretend like it's a different day?
We're here in studio today. You can stay dressed, sir.
I got another outfit in there in my car, so.
No, we're good.
All right, good. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to our show. You can find Blake and I on social media channels at Blake Rayhans and at Stacey Mallon.
Be sure to follow Optimized AF on Instagram and rate and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. See you next time.